Okay, thank you so much. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I'm not sure where you're joining from in the world, but I would imagine it's sometime in the day. But it's good to have you with us. And I think this is the fourth of our um, community of practice four-part series in terms of constructive learning series. So in our guided modules, we focus on the theoretical elements of certain understanding and so forth. So we're looking forward to going through financial management today with you. And I think what's quite important about this section is that when we think about financial planning and financial management and all these things, we're very clear that many of you have been working for many, many years doing brilliant work. So this is not to say that the practices that the organization currently has are not good practices. We're just saying, how do we make our practices better? Is there anything that we haven't been exposed to that we can learn from others to strengthen our own financial management practices as an organization? So I think what we'll do is we'll get straight into it and we'll um, just get into today's session. So today's session is the last session. We covered in the first session, we talked about understanding when you want to improve your finances and you want to improve your revenue generation, you look at opportunities. Then you move from opportunities to understanding which opportunities are those you can leverage and should leverage. And then once you're clear on that, you start planning, thinking, how do I plan for these opportunities amongst my existing base business? So today we move from planning to managing. And what we want to focus on are sort of four main topics or four main components of financial management. So we're looking at financial management in the with the view that what we're trying to do is make sure that the programs we offer are resilient. So it's all about anchoring our mission because we are all here on a mission. And sometimes we have to change our mission because of the financial circumstances we find our program in. So, and being clear on that, when all is said and done, your program that you offer needs to be resilient because that ensures that the engine of your organization is functioning optimally and is also can resist fluctuations in the economy, in the environment, whatever you're having to navigate in the space in which you operate. And then we want to cultivate a culture of resource stewardship. And this really means generally those of us who are non-financial people, for instance, I'm more of an operations person, if you can sort of say, where do I sit in the value chain? Those of us who are in operations, we tend to see finance being the finance manager's responsibility or the CEO's responsibility. So, how do we as operators practice collective responsibility and better understand the finance discipline that we have to learn and that we contribute to? And then it's about we live in a world of technology. Technology can either be your friend and enable an organization to do more, or it can be something you overlook and therefore you continue to operate inefficiently. So we want to understand technology insofar as it helps us to be more effective. Not technology for the sake of technology, technology which is relevant and effective for the space in which you operate in. And then we want to think about financial health is important. So being resilient is important. But for many of us, there's this constant tension between being financially resistant and having true impact. So sometimes we have to make decisions where we feel to manage finances, we're having less impact. So what we want to do is ensure that we are focused on keeping impact at the front and center of everything that we do. And so this is just about understanding what metrics will allow us to be able to do that and how we then use those metrics to balance what we need to understand about our budgets. Okay. So there's quite a lot of things we're going to look through today, but it's really saying what can we do to assist all of us learn from each other with regard to financial management, especially when we have so many years of practice. And in this room, if we were to tally up the experience everyone has, I'm sure we would exceed a good 1,000 years. So there's a lot we can learn from each other, which is really, really great. So what we're going to do is we're going to really recap on the last couple of sessions in 5 minutes, and then we'll dive into the topic of today, which is financial management. And because it's a guided module session, we will unpack a lot of, or what I would say, a fair amount of theoretical elements, which are designed for you to understand. If I was brand new starting a process, this is the theory I would follow. And you to take what you need from that and say, what can I apply to my organization, which is operating in the real world today, if we can put it that way. We'll give you some guidance and talk about starter packs and toolkits, leverage technology, and then we'll talk about the next session, which is another opportunity for us to get around the table and learn from each other, so more as organizations. So if you think about that flow of the sessions we've had, the peer learning sessions were designed for more talking from the organizations and less listening from, say, a GSF perspective. And so what we welcome in all of our sessions is we ask you to be fully present and engage, ask questions, because the idea here is not just to make this a lecture. It's about engaging, because there's always something we can learn from you as well as what you can learn from us. Okay, so for our icebreaker today, there are about 6 of us or 5 of us online at the moment. So we'd like to take this opportunity for you to share with us your name, the organization you're from, because we know that we have a variety of people that come in and out and so forth. How would you rate, and the question or the thing we're going to focus today is, how would you rate your current financial management practices on a scale of 1 to 5? 1 being poor and 5 being excellent. Now, understand this is your view of how your organization is doing right now. We're not saying that your view is reality or is, necessarily correct in that sense, but it's your experience of the financial processes and practices in your organization. So if you can give that some thought for a few seconds, and there aren't too many of us online, so it would be great if you can just unmute and share your perspective on how you rate your financial management practices. So you can unmute or put up your hand, whatever works for you. If you're ready to say something, I see Francis is unmuted, which would be great if Francis was ready to start and kick us off with sharing an answer to this question. Francis, can I hand over to you?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, madam. My name is, as I said earlier, my name is Edmund, not Francis, but I'm from CDF, Morogoro, Tanzania. I would like to rate our financial management to, I think, number 3, because we are not such excellent and you are not such poor. So I can say we can rate ourselves by giving ourselves number 3.
Okay, thank you very much. Who would like to go next, or should I just call out names based on who I see after Francis? Oh, there goes Charles. Go for it, Charles.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Charles from Black, Uganda. I'm glad to be here. I think this could be my second session. So, in terms of the question that has been asked, for Black, as you're aware, I think for me, I rate Black the scale of 5. I give Black 4 in terms of financial management, but also in terms of financial health.
Okay. Yeah.
So I know you might need to ask a lot of questions regarding this, but from practice, I think we deserve 4, not 5, because it's difficult to get 5.
Yes.
Yeah, previously we used to do manual financial management, but now we have a mix of both manual but more of digital.
Yes.
So it's easier for you to monitor what is going on in terms of your finances. but also instead of like asking for this, and introduce what they call BI-side, where you just look at the dashboard and you're able to see how we are performing.
Yes.
But previously we are not there. But I
Okay.
think there's been a lot of changes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think that's what I can say for now.
Thank you so much, Charles. Who would like to go next? Renee, Enoch, Ibrahim?
Charles, do you want to tag someone also? You can do that. So you don't have to do the tough work.
Ibrahim, I saw you unmuted. Go for it.
How do we ask? We have similar.
Ibrahim, you can go for it. I saw you unmute.
Yes, good afternoon, and for me, I'm in Uganda. We are in afternoon. My name is Ibrahim Mohammed, and I work with Rewon Uganda as a program coordinator. The question is, okay. The question is, how would you rate our current financial management? I can say that 4. We are trying our best.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how would you? What would you rate that? Between 1 to 5, 1 being poor and 5 being excellent.
Yeah, I said 4.
4. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, 4. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bene, Sanda, or Bente. I don't know if you pronounce the T. If you can unmute, I don't know if you're able to unmute. Okay, Naomi, I know you just joined us, but we were really having an icebreaker and sharing which organization we're from and just your view on how you would rate your organization on financial management practices, 1 being poor and 5 being excellent.
Yeah, I read the question, and I'm as you said, I just joined and I actually misunderstood the timing in Norway. Sorry for that. I thought it was 3:30, but it's now it was 2:30. But I'm quite interested in the question because I'm working for the last 5-6 years. I've been working as a consultant, and I've been with many organizations that work on education in emergency, localization, nexus, contextualization of different kind of tools. And
Yes.
I have to be honest and say that education is not the most prioritized area in humanitarian aid.
100%.
And I think it's important to state that because everyone wants to say, yes, we give it a priority, we blah, blah, blah. But in the end of the day, it is really a challenge to get money for education.
Yes.
And it's not getting up, it's going down. And it has been worse over the last year plus after the big change in US.
Yes.
Where a lot of people was fired and are not in work anymore. And how can then education be prioritized? And also, they are the important work we do for teachers today when people get fired and when strategies is put in a drawer. And how can we then move on?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to say it and to be aware of it. So in general, for over the last 5 years, I have been a consultant for 5-6 different organizations, developing mental health and psychosocial programs. I've been to Ukraine, I've been to Moldova, to Poland. I have earlier been working in the Middle East. I've been living abroad for years and years. So my age is quite high because of that. But you know, over the last year, I can see that it's difficult to get implemented education programs because money is not in place.
Yeah. That's very true. Very, very true.
So I think it's difficult to come on and say that I will give it a 4, 3 or a 4, but because it is not there, it's much lower. Because there are other issues that come first. We have to fight to get the money for education. If people are not educated, if we can't educate the kids in school, we will not move ahead when it comes to getting people on board or getting people educated, as easy as that. And the same, using tools. We have to use tools that we have to use have to be contextualized so it's understood among those close to the culture, and people understand what it is about.
No, 100%. Thank you so much, Bente. Do you say Bente or Bene? Just wanted to know.
Benta.
Benta. Okay, yes,
Yeah.
it's the Norwegian.
But keep me in the loop. And if you do any minutes, because I'm actually in a different meeting when I got this meeting now. So I just wanted to say this before I unfortunately have to leave. But keep me in the loop and invite me again.
Okay, thank you so much. And all the best. Naomi, you were going to say something. Thank you. Keep well. Naomi? Maybe if you can share.
Yes, please.
Yes, go
Yes,
for it.
please. Good afternoon. So this is Naomi Musiande. I work with Opportunity Bank and Opportunity International, and I would rate our financial management process. I think I give ourselves a scale of 3 because I can't say that we are perfect, but we try our best at least to manage our finances well. And I like the way we focus on financial inclusion and sustainability growth of our customers. So I think I would give ourselves a scale of 3 to 4.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. So I think, as you can see, most organizations see that they're between a 3 and a 4. There are things that are working well. There are things that are not working so well. We all know there's always areas of improvement. And I think if you listen to what Bene was saying, it's really Bente was saying is that how we see financial management is really framed by which area of education we're in. So most of us here are implementers working on implementing a program. And so when we think about financial management, we're looking really at our organization and what we have on hand, recognizing that we rely a lot on donor, government support, et cetera, et cetera. If you are someone who's looking more at the ecosystem of early learning and education, you then understand that the variables and what's happened to a shift in what I would call financial support or changes in financial support. So what she was saying was really, really relevant for us. And I suppose as organizations operating in these spaces where what we could call private or public funding and support for initiatives that you work on so deeply, what does that mean for your financial management processes and practices? And that's why resilience becomes so important and is a major focus for today. Isaac, I don't think you had a chance to go. Just seeing your name now, sorry. Isaac, would you like to share where you are at as an organization? Are you able to unmute? Okay, I think Isaac is struggling with unmuting, but in the interest of time, we'll move on. So we go through this. So let's really recap very quickly. I spoke about this verbally when I was starting. This is the fourth of module of, or guided module of 4 sessions. In between, we've had peer learning after 2 sessions, and as well as advisory session. Peer learning was an opportunity for organizations to learn from each other from the work they've done. The advisory office hours was a one-on-one session for organizations who felt they wanted that one-on-one engagement and opportunity to unpack some of the things they had identified more closely. So today we're at the 11th of March and we're looking at financial management and tracking. Now, one thing that's important about management, you can't really track what you don't manage. So it's one thing to say, well, we're tracking indicators, but if you can't manage the indicators you're tracking, then there's a problem. Similarly, on the financial side, for finance to manage something, we need to all know what are we collecting, what are those indicators which are informing the metrics in finance, which they can then manage and feed back to us. So it's quite an important aspect. So just to recap, we covered revenue generating, we covered assessing and prioritizing revenue. We had a peer learning session, and out of it, one of the sort of key revenue opportunities recognized was how do we use existing assets? Many of us think of revenue opportunities, we think of skills and things we don't already have, but we focus very much on if we took what we had, could we leverage it more effectively? And then how do we use subsidies and grants effectively? Then we had the office hours. And today we're talking about managing. And why is it a railway line? Railway lines are fairly solid in construct, but their construct in being solid is actually quite simple and it's small. So the foundation of your financial management practice, and this is an important point, needs to be simple that everyone in your organization, in terms of at a leadership level, program managers or whatever they do, are able to work with your financial model and meet the requirements of your model. So if you're asking people, if you work in a place where you know that people travel by public transport, the public transport system doesn't have invoices and things like that, to have a financial system that only functions when there's an invoice would probably be futile because you're constantly having this challenge between not having the right paperwork. So you've got to be thinking that base that you have, is it fit for purpose, and how does it help you standardize what you need to standardize and manage? So if we move on, we're going to dive into financial management. We're now going to focus on what is financial management. So if you think about financial management, what do you think managing finances well looks like? So you all rated your organization somewhere between 3 and 4 were the ratings. I would like to assume that there were gaps in your management, but what does excellence look like in your organization? If we take today, not necessarily the future in terms of 2, 3 years' time, but what would excellence look like right now? And I'll just take a few people to answer this particular question. Who would like to share with us what they think excellent financial management looks like or is? Okay, would anyone like to share what financial management looks like? So I'm going to ask you, Francis, because you said that BRAC has a lot of systems, a lot of processes. And when I say a lot, I'm not saying in terms of number, but it's very advanced in their processes. Maybe Charles, you can share with us, because you're from BRAC, where would you see, most of us look at BRAC and we think BRAC has everything they need. So where would you see it becoming, better or, yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. And before I start, I want to inform you that I'm not from finance. I don't have a finance background.
Yeah.
But from experience, and because I've been in this organization for quite some time.
Yes.
And from practice. So, basing on the question that you've asked here, what do you think the financing well looks like? So for me, the beginning point is on the systems and processes. So any good financial management requires that there are good systems, financial procedures that organization, the staff working in the organization will be able to follow so that they are not abused. So for me, that's the beginning part of it. And then secondly, of course, when you look at the processes and procedures, it should be processes that enable the organization to achieve its mission.
Yes.
It should not be the one that make it difficult for people to perform their day-to-day activities. So it should be an enabling kind of processes that shape the way organization implement its or achieves its mandate. For me, that's the beginning part. Two, we are looking at the human resource. So when you have the systems, then you must have the right people to
Yes.
steer the financial resources. This means you have to hire people with technical knowledge, but of course, actually people have a capacity to, to deliver. Sometimes you may have people who are highly qualified, but may not able to perform. But I use the word people have ability to deliver according to what has already been maybe in the written documents in the systems and processes.
Yes.
And then the third part, for me, the third reason that's most important, given the current situation, is the technology. Previously, we used to rely, all organizations you rely on manual work. So just imagine, if, for example, I'm in Kampala here, our head office, and then some work is going on 600 kilometers away, and you're using the manual system.
Yes.
So it becomes quite hard, for you to be able to manage, especially also to deliver some of the activities. Because just imagine you are account director of that organization. I'm just giving this, not brag. That organization where you are. And it happened that today you are in Tanzania, maybe in South Africa, and they need your signature.
Yes.
And maybe there is a cap, there's a limit for people that you have delegated, how much they should sign. Now you are in South Africa, but you're supposed to be here in Uganda. So what do you do? So introduction of the technology has enabled managers to be able to like sign, because nowadays you can sign e-signature even when you are far away. So you can track how expenditures, when you are far away, you can track income, but also track expenditure, even wherever you are. You don't need to be in the office. You don't need to be present in your workplace. Anywhere you can be able to track. For me, those are the three main things. Of course, there could be others, but of course, most importantly, the leadership. You can have the systems, you can have the human resource, you can have the best technology, but if you don't have good leadership, everything will not work out. So
that sounds
for me, this is what I see as
thank you so much, Charles. Yeah.
best tenets for this question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Is anyone else got anything to add to that? What they see as good financial management or perspective to add? Okay, what we'll do is we will go for it. I see someone's unmuted. Francis, go for it.
Okay. Thank you, Madam. I want to just contribute to the how do I think as what is managing finance well. Personally, I think when you say managing finance well is when you try to balance between your revenues and your expenditures, what you earn and how do you spend, so that you can be able to maybe to sustain for the long period of time. For example, maybe for example, for us as NGOs, at the beginning of the year, we plan for our finances by having maybe budgets by having how can we fundraise, how can we maybe get donor funded projects, but after being maybe funded, how do you manage those finances? Actually, how do you manage revenue for your well-being? I think in short term, when you say managing finance well, it's all about managing revenues and expenditure so that you can sustain for a long time of period.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So we're going to move on and just really look at the definition of financial management. And at a classical level, it's really the stewardship of resources. And in our spaces, it's very important that this stewardship ensures continuity of our mission and our impact. It's not good enough to say, well, I've managed my finances, the organization is stable, but I've had limited impact or I've had to reduce my impact significantly. Because why we exist is to have impact in education for most, for our communities. So at a activity level, financial management is what day-to-day processes do we have where we plan, organize, and monitor the money elements or monetary elements of a project. And how do we protect the learning minutes? So in other words, the learning minutes is about if we don't have the money, we cannot teach the children. So how much does it cost for us? You know, one of the most common indicators becomes the cost per child for many of us in our programs. So how do we protect those costs for children? And when we think about expansion, are we able to expand while that cost reduces somewhat? So it's not if it costs you 10 Rand, it doesn't become 10 plus 10 equals 20 because now you've got 2 children. It should be 10 plus 8 equals 18 because you've got 2 children. So that just says how we protect the cost per child. Okay. So if we think about, we've discussed this quite a lot about what, and some of you have alluded to what types of practices, what type of traits are evidence that the organization has sound practices. We've talked about leadership being there. We've said if you have a system, we've talked about the system or processes you have, everybody, the people in the organization need to be able to do them, need to be able to understand them. Is there anything that in what we've talked about, where we haven't mentioned a certain sign or practice that you can think of, which would be beneficial for others to also hear about? Or do we think we've covered everything? Okay, I will take, if there's no one talking, I will take it as that we've covered everything, which is perfectly fine, because I think our initial discussion was quite broad and we really got some good content from that in terms of thinking. Now, if we think about these, and we think about discipline, this is one of the things that are most difficult. The tension between financial discipline, which is a habit of where money goes and exactly knowing what you, like if we think of community engagement, many of us do community engagement, we're very good at understanding the cost of our first of community engagement, but when we have to do other smaller meetings, we sort of lose the discipline of tracing the money and the cost of engaging the community and community leaders. But financial discipline is about being able to trace all activities and the monies associated with it. Sometimes it's not the money you're paying. Sometimes it's the time you're spending. So if I, for instance, got paid in a day 800 Rand, which is what, $400, let's say a day, as an example, that would mean I'm paid, so many dollars per hour. So if we think about, sometimes I'm not paying someone, I'm not paying for a venue, but I'm talking to someone. The question would be, where did Saneh spend her time? So of the 400, 200 was spent with Saneh talking to other community leaders and so forth. And so that's what it means about financial discipline. Are we able to track every activity we do in a consistent way to enable our sustainability? And financial discipline also means, are we able to do this all the time. Habit means we do it without even thinking about it. We do it subconsciously. It is part of our DNA, it's part of the way we work. So if we think about financial discipline, my question to all of you is when it comes to maintaining financial discipline, which is understanding where the money goes and when it's spent, and also the frequency of every day understanding this, what internal processes does your organization have that the organization cannot live without? Or if your organization does not have them, what processes do you, or tools do you think are key to enabling financial discipline? So anyone can share. Isaac, you've been rather quiet. I don't know if you're able to share at this moment, if you're able to unmute and maybe share so we can hear your voice. And anyone else who has a thought around financial discipline who would like to answer the question. So those of you who rated your organization 3 or 4, would you say that it has strong financial discipline practices as a norm? Or is it something that is you endeavor to do, but you still struggle? Maybe you can share with us what prevents you from having financial discipline as a habit and consistently. You're all very quiet. I don't know if that's good or bad. Charles, go ahead first.
Yeah, let me come again. I think when you talk about financial discipline, we are talking about a colleague, the previous speaker said, that's about how you manage your revenue and how you manage the revenue and expenditure. So if the money has been allocated for a particular event or activity, then it must go there. It must go there. But also, if it has to go there, then you have to stick to the budget. If the budget is 30 million, it should be 30 million. It means when you are planning, then you should be able to plan appropriately, that whatever you're putting there, it should enable you to achieve what you intend to achieve. If you under budget, it becomes a problem. If you over budget, it also becomes a problem. So for me, you must stick to what that money has been allocated for. It is for buying a car, it must go to buy a car. Not after the budget has been approved, then you're going to buy something else. Then that ceases to be financial discipline.
You know, Charles, what you're saying has got me thinking. What I find in my experience, one of the most difficult things that we deal with is the fact that we have a funder that will pay for this part of our program. But for that part of our program to work, we need to do ABC, which is done before that part. Now, thinking about what you're saying, how then do we navigate in the principle of the money should go where it's supposed to go in that context where there's steps that need to be done before the bit that the funder has paid for, but there's no money for that part. How have you navigated that as your organization?
Yeah, maybe just I may not be able to give the best answer that you could actually require.
Yeah.
But the practice that I talked about earlier on about systems and processes.
Yeah.
So of course they are like approval processes.
Yes.
Approval processes. If it is a grant from the donor, it means the donors have authorized you to use that money.
Yes.
Based on the approved plan, work plan, and the budget.
Yeah.
Now, once that money is now in your account as an organization, you have your own systems of ensuring that, yes, before an activity takes place, this is what has to be followed.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning point. Because when you have systems that it is SANE who's supposed to approve this amount of money. It should be SANE, not Charles. And if it is Charles to recommend, it must be Charles. Not everybody recommends, because if we allow anyone else to be recommending anything, then that will be prone to abuse.
Yes.
And then you're not having financial discipline. For me, that is the beginning point. Those processes have to be carefully followed to the dot, so that you can have the discipline on how to spend it.
Yeah.
Because if you allow anyone to do anything, then your systems may not be working. And then we not achieve what we call financial discipline. So
yeah, I think
that's
you're
what
right.
I can say for now. Maybe other colleagues here can be able to add. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charles. Anyone else would like to add? I mean, if we think about, we're often given money for something, but to do that something, we need to do other things. How do we navigate that in the context of financial discipline? I don't know, Francis, Naomi, Ibrahim, if you can share from your side, what do you typically do? I don't know if you're able to unmute. Naomi, can you share with us what you do? Just so we have a different perspective. I think she's having connectivity problem. Ibrahim, are you able to share with us what you do in terms of your organization to get to improve or maintain financial discipline? Okay, I think people are very quiet today. They're thinking hard. Okay, I'm going to move on because I think we need to get to the case study, just looking at the time. But if you're not sure where to start all of this, what we do have is in your toolkit is a wonderful step-by-step process, which we call a starter pack. A starter pack means where you start. So as Charles was sharing, he was sharing systems that need to be in place, and he even moved from the system and the process into approvals. And you have to have people who are going to approve certain things and others who are going to sign off. Ideally, in most organizations, you need one person to request, the approver to be their manager, and someone else to also approve all of that, in terms of protecting the organization. So the starter pack is a way to say, if you are not at the place you'd like to be, maybe this is how you can start your journey to managing your finances well. And we call it a starter pack because it's exactly that. It is a guide and key components of what you need to do. And so there are 4 key components, 5. And the first one is you need to have a yearly budget. So you need to have a plan. So based on whatever you're trying to achieve, you need to see that your plan should be 12 months, 2 years, whatever it is. And for many of us, the funding we get from donors takes us more than a year to sort of 24 months, etc. So we need to have a plan. And then we need bookkeeping, and then we need to be able to reconcile what are we spending versus what we have available. And then we need to be able to report on it and make sure that we are meeting the key performance indicators. And when we wrap up in that year or in that project, we need to be able to consolidate all this information. So what is a yearly budget about? Yearly budget is about strategically allocating the annual resources. So if we know we need 5 million a year, then we can say, okay, we need 5 million a year. Quarter 1, we need 500,000, and maybe the bulk of it is spent in the middle 2 quarters, quarters 2 and 3, whatever that is. But it allows us to allocate when we will be using the money. The important thing about an annual budget as well is to consider, when do you get funds in? So when would your donor typically make payment? Because it doesn't help to say you'll continue activity or start activity, intensify activity when the funds are only coming 2 months later. Then we have the bookkeeping goes back to what Charles was referring to about accurate allocation of funds and also managing and ensuring that we all allocate it correctly. And how we do that is we maintain accurate data-driven financial records. So the level to which you need to be able to show in your organization depends on the type of organization or program that you run. So if you're a program that helps practitioners, and yours is about teaching practitioners, then you need to be able to see the money spent at a practitioner level. If you, up to a practitioner level, if you also help the actual children in the sites with resources, then whatever money you get, you need to be able to see it down to site level. You know, in terms of the number of children, 5 on a site, 2 got books, the other 3 didn't, that kind of thing. And then with all of these, you need to have a simple way which the information you get back, you're able to adjust, consolidate, and reconcile. So you're able to see, I plan to spend 2 million rand or shillings or whatever it is, but actually you really spent 1.5. So now there is a gap of 500. What can you do with that 500,000? And then approvals and reporting. Because then the important thing about reporting for all of us in our space is that I believe you may start a journey with a funder with a certain expectation, certain things you need to do. And as I was talking about the example where to do what the funder gave you money for, you realize after you've accepted the money that there are things that have to be done before. The only way to effectively share that with your funder is in your reporting and approval process with the funder, explaining to them that we're at this point because we needed 1, 2, 3 before, and therefore, and often I've found when you explain to funders and they can see it, and it's in reports, it's in pictures and everything, then you're able to work with your funder to continue to have the impact that you want to have. And then every year is a point of reflection. Let's review our performance and improve. What did we budget correctly? What didn't we budget correctly? But the idea of what I mean by budget correctly is more about the phasing. Did we budget the right amount? Did we budget that we'd spend the money at the right time? So if I give you an example just about timing of budget and review is where I used to work, we used to produce resources for every site. Now, in a budget, because we would deliver and sites would get these resources in January, our budget used to say the money would be spent in January. But if you think about it, we started planning what we'd do in January in October because we needed to buy things in October. So we had to move a portion of that budget, which was buying the materials, putting the books, the packs together, etc., to before January. And the only thing that sat in January is distribution costs. But before we did the review, we didn't realize we needed to make that change. So this is what reviewing performance is about. So if you think about your organization, what is the first step of your organization's financial management cycle right now? Where does your organization tend to start its process? Because we are going concerns. We are organizations that are in action. So it'd be interesting to hear from someone other than Charles, just so we can hear other voices in the room, so we can learn from each other. Charles has shared some great stuff with us. Maybe some of you can share where does your organization start its financial management cycle? I don't know if you can hear me, Francis. Maybe you can share how CDF does it.
Sorry, Sunny, if you can come again. So.
Okay. What I was saying is that we have a process here of a starter kit where you start with financial management. But in your organization, CDF, where do you start? Do you start with your annual budgeting, or do you look first at bookkeeping as in what you spent where before you plan what you're going to spend next year? Or do you look at How did we do in the last year where, this is what we're doing? I just want to understand what is the standard practice in CDF's organization? What is typical? Where do you start your process?
Our process starts with, first of all, we have what we call strategic plan. We actually plan for 5 years, 5-year strategic plan. And that strategic plan tends to carry budget. So we have yearly budget. For example, if we have a 5-year strategic plan, it means for every year we have a corresponding budget. So financial planning starts with a long-term strategic plan, then budget. From budget is where we tend to spend according to budget. So there is when bookkeeping comes from.
Okay, thank you so much. Does anyone do anything different? Sort of not have a set planning session and then spend? Is there anyone who maybe looks at it differently? Or instead of 5 years, looks at it at a year at a time or even shorter periods because of the uncertainty, I would say, of where they work or the community they serve? Okay, as we give a bit of thought to timing, in the toolkit, we also have a budgeting template. So if you're unsure, because we spoke about when we started about managing finances effectively. You can only manage your finances effectively if you have allocated your finances effectively. So the purpose of this template, I know a few weeks ago we spoke about the financial planning template. We also have a budgeting template. And the whole idea is to help you break down your costs in a way that allows you to better manage them as the year goes. So once again, this tool, like all tools, it has the first page where you learn how to use it. You read the instructions. There are places where you fill in, and then there are places where it self-populates because you want the dashboards, or what I would call the charts that come up, are it's based on the information you load in, but there are elements where you can't because of the equations behind the system. Sorry about that. And so on that side, that's what you would need to look at. I don't know if Priyanka can drop the link to the template in the chat, so all of you have it.
Yeah,
Oh,
I just
excellent.
did.
So much. So you all have the link. So it's useful that if you're starting your journey or you've been in a volatile environment, and when I say volatile, I mean in terms of your program implementation plus the financial support associated with it, that you go back to this budgeting template. You know what you want to do, but you go back to the budgeting template to help you allocate money to the right places and in the right way. Then you will have something, a base that you can work with within the volatility of your circumstance. If I could just ask, how many of you or which of you are working in environments that are very volatile? So sometimes implementing and doing what you planned is difficult to do because of the dynamics of the community you serve. Does anyone have that experience? And I'm going to lean towards Naomi just to ask, do you have that experience where you operate?
Yes, can you give me the question, please?
So I'm saying in the environment where your organization operates, in the community, is it a community that's stable, or do you find that sometimes you can work, sometimes you can't work, sometimes you have to stop working because something's happening in the environment, and therefore what happens to your ability to plan and manage the money? Or sometimes you go to a community to do work and you find you can't work on that day, so you've already spent the money because you've gone there. Just wondering what kind of environment you work in, if you can share with our colleagues.
According to the experience that we have in the field, to the community where we work from, it's dependent on the situation that the clients are in, because sometimes you can budget. Maybe, for example, if you have a business clinic, an example, and
Yeah.
your budget for, let me say, like 100 people, then you do the needful, the mobilization to the community leaders, everything. But maybe something happened that needs more of them to be aware, and that can get something like disorganization, something like that. So it depends on the situation that you're in. Sometimes it's successful, and sometimes something can happen and it disorganize the program a bit.
If I can ask a question, when when it isn't successful, what does your organization do? What do you do with the money that's either left over or the money that was spent and nothing happened? How do you manage that?
We manage that according to the budget, how the program was. Because if the budget was going for 100 people, then it has to be done to the needful program.
Okay. It's quite interesting because I think when we do community engagement and we are talking to the community, sometimes we expect a lot of people, and only a few people, attend. And sometimes in these communities, depending on your organization, some organizations, when they do community engagement, because it's a long day, they tend to offer sandwiches or whatever the case may be, or a plate of something to eat. And what you find is when the number is less, you've now spent because you've had to pay the caterer, the person bringing the food, and yet the people are not there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes also you find when you budget for 100 people, and some refugees, I can't say all, they
Yes.
like sharing information where they see something good happening. So you can budget for 100 people and you're seeing like over 500 members attending, and you have to serve all of them.
Yes. And I think that's the challenge of the communities we work in, right? So when we come to things like budgeting and things like planning, it's useful that if you know anything and understand the community well, when you're doing community engagement with leaders, you find out what are the norms in this community. Do people hear of something happening and they all go there? Or is it a community where it's less? Because this helps you plan from a money side, from a catering side, if you are going to have to expect more people rather than less, then you can even change maybe the type of food you serve or whatever it is to stay within your budget. Okay. So I'm going to move on from that. Thank you for that, Naomi. And then there's an element when we put everything into our system, we need to understand as people working in these environments, what is the data telling you? Now, when you think of data, we have finance teams who put information together, and they're putting the information together so those of us who are in decision-making roles can make decisions, not just putting information together so that we have the information consolidated. It's more about how does it affect your decision making. So when you think about it, what type of numbers do you want to see? In some cases, you want to see staff costs. Our staff costs 65% of expenses. Now, 65% is the norm, but in your case, it may be more or less. You also want to look at things like how often do we get fees? Are fees being paid more consistently, like every month and for 9 months of the year, and there's 3 months where we're not paid, or is it worse than that? Is it 6 months of the year? And then what does that mean for some of the decisions you need to make around resources? And then transport costs. If you have sites which people have to travel to, what is the impact of changes in the cost of transport or changes in the type of transport? So if there was a lot of local bikes and taxis that were able to lift individuals and people to a site, and now that's no longer there, how does that impact your program and delivery thereof? And then if sometimes we may find that in our bid to really look closely at our finances, we tend to spend less. And so are there areas of underspending, such as training? And often when you underspend, it's an opportunity to review whether or not how we're spending is effective. Because there's an underspend, technically it allows us an opportunity to strengthen or provide the service for more. And then how do we manage cash flow dips in the same months in each quarter? So for instance, this is about the phasing of your budget. So if you know, for instance, in South Africa, we tend to get fees from parents between February and October. The risky months are January, November, and December. For some reason, parents don't want to pay fees in January. They also don't want to pay in November because they assume the syllabus is finished and the kids don't come every day. They wait until graduation, which is normally early December, and they come for the graduation day. Or alternatively, when the school, older school calendar, so like um, children that are in primary school and high school, when they close in the June, July period, we also find early learnings affected because parents now don't send their children because there's an older sibling or someone at home who can look after the child, and therefore the money we collect in early learning is very low. And then how cash flow is affected by donors. So if your donor says, for instance, I'll be giving you money in January, and now we're in March, the money hasn't come through, but you plan to start your activity in February. Those are the things we use the information to help us make decisions about what we will do differently in the coming year. So if you look in your toolkit, in there, there's a page where it says and gives an indication of when you have high staff costs, what might you see and what are potential ideas of what you can do about it. These are just ideas. This is not to say this is what you must do. Okay, it's just ideas that on what we can do. So I urge you to have a closer look at this particular page and see if these ideas are ideas which you're currently using, or there's something there that you can take for your own organization. So what I'm going to do now is move on to leveraging technology. So we've done a bit of an overview, but when we talk about technology, technology is about optimizing financial oversight and instilling discipline. And I wanted us to think about this question a bit, but I think if we go back to the original discussion we had where we spoke about how technology helps us to do more, that's another option of technology. But I'd like us to look at a case study and really spend the next few minutes of this session looking at this case study and talking about what is similar between what we do and what maybe this that has been done by Tiny Totos that can give us an idea for ourselves. So the case study is Tiny Totos. Tiny Totos is based out of East Africa, Kenya, and their case study was on transforming childcare and transforming lives through innovations, one in finance and then in technology. And why is this important to think about this? Because many people think if I have a system, I have solved my technology and finance in one thing. But there's innovation you can do in finance, which is agnostic or outside of your system in the sense that it doesn't depend on having a system. And then there's there's benefit that you can get from having a system and financial benefits. So it's one thing, but it's also in two parts. So let's look at what happened with finance with Tiny Totos. So their theme, they were struggling to have sustainable sites. They were struggling to expand, and they thought, how do they move from an informal model to an investable model? An investable model meant how do they improve the resilience of the organization and resilience of the sites they support, such that they can become investable. And investable means someone is prepared to give them money. So what did they do on a financial front? The first thing is they moved from an unprofitable model to a profitable model. And because their sites are owned by individuals, they would run boot camps, and the boot camps were structured in a way that it helped the owners of the sites increase their revenue 3 times or 4 times fold, such that they started to not only break even, but also make a profit. And so it moved from survival into sustainable business. Then they also, while they were doing this in the boot camp, they found a way to use childcare payment history as a denominator for credit, which means based on the payment for the facility by parents, the fees, or that the practitioner can say, I have half of my children paying monthly, this is how much they pay. They use this to provide credit. Now, if we think of many of us, we know that our sites want to expand, want to develop, but the way the financial system is currently set up, they struggle to get credit. So this is just an interesting way. And what they did is they used these consistent daycare payments to build credit scores. So if you're able to collect 1,000 Rand monthly for 6 months, that proved to the creditors that you can earn you earn 6,000 Rand consistently from this time to this time. So maybe you can be given a credit loan of 3,000 Rand and you'll pay it in the over 6 months and so forth, which is a very powerful concept. Then the other thing they did, they said, in as much as we're giving funding, we recognize the volatility of the environment. Therefore, they provided a low interest rates to owners and parents. What's interesting about this is that parents as well, who generally don't have lots of assets, they found a way to provide these with loans. And the loans were prescriptive. So they focused on a certain area of their business. So they only provided loans for items which improved children's health while increasing the business market value. So if I think of it from a parent's perspective, if a parent wanted to buy better food or help support nutrition at the site, they would support that parent because nutrition helps children remember better, because we know nutrition is one of the foundations of successful learning. And then they monetized the network. They found an opportunity for additional income. And what they did was they moved into a distribution network from all the sites they had. They were selling things like nutritious food and earning commission for value-add products, which links back to how do you generate revenue from better asset utilization. So in their case, this is what they did to earn income for their practitioners. Before I move on to technology, is there anyone where this resonates with them, where this, or maybe there's a thought that this sparks for you, or you want to understand how, you have a question about any of these financial elements? Or is everything clear for now? You'll find the details of the case study, some details of the case study in your toolkit as well. I don't know if there's anyone who has any thoughts, but if there's no thoughts, I will move on, because I know we do share this deck with you after the session as well. So you might reflect in it as you prepare for the peer learning session. So if we look at the same case study and we say, what was the benefit of technology? What are the key things that technology enabled Tiny Totos to do? And they developed an app called Omototo. It's a digital backbone. Now, if you think about it, many of us know that technology will help us get information from places where we aren't physically present, which is a good thing. But the question becomes, the app or the technology you're using, is it giving you the right information? And can it be given to your network if you have a network? Okay. How effective is it in terms of accessibility and usability? So they developed the Mototo app. And if we just talk about a few things, so this Mototo daycare app, it brought professionalism to the operations. One thing I do know, when you put the correct data into a system or into an app, you get the correct data out. So their app, they were able to simplify such that the practitioner requirements that they had to put in were simple. So if I use the example of, in South Africa, we have a thing called ECED Connect. It is an app, and it's supposed to be a universal app. And this particular app, in developing it, the version they started with when they started developing it and the version they have today is quite different, because along the way they discovered that some of the elements of the app which seem simple for you and I were actually not simple for site owners in terms of what they had to do, how they had to do it. So they developed the app. But if you look at this app, what did it do? It was able to track child attendance. It was able to automate attendance. And because of that, it was able to provide oversight on who's paying when and how much who paid. Okay? Which is a very important thing. Then it also moved to a digital or cashless economy in that sense, that because of the data, and as I mentioned earlier, where parents were able to get loans because they were able to prove that they pay fees every month or however frequently, they were able to include those previously excluded financially, which was really great. And they moved this into from cash transaction into a digital format. So even as children come to the site, I know in Tanzania there are a lot of organizations where children will pay for food every day. They bring actual money. And you know, money on site is risky, because then if there are people around who want to steal the money, it puts the site at risk. So having a cashless environment where the money can be put onto the app and the site doesn't carry cash is a very powerful thing from a safety perspective. The other thing, because they had the app, they could now track data. So when we talked about what is the data telling you, the app was telling them data in a real-time sense, so they could monitor health indicators for their businesses, for the sites, for their organization, and the work they do. And as well as it helped them monitor child development in terms of what was happening across their network. And then it also allowed them to expand outside of Kenya into other markets, and also to expand across rural communities, because we all know when you are in a rural community, communities are sparse, and therefore traveling between them can take a long time, accessing them can take a long time. So the model allowed them to replicate and set up sites in places which would have previously been quite difficult to do. Does anyone have any thoughts on this technology, or any insights or aha moments of reflection that you'd like to share or think about?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, this is Julius. I'm the founder and executive director of Voice for Disabled People Association from Kakuma Refugee Camp. So, Voice for Disabled People Association, it is a refugee-led organization working in Kakuma and Kalobeye settlement to support mostly refugees with disabilities. As
Okay.
yes, yes, refugees with disabilities around Kakuma and Kalobeye. I'm very glad to participate in this meeting, because what I'm learning is very, very important to us. So the problem is, as we are supporting mostly persons with disabilities who are facing a lot of challenges around the camp, there we have different projects that support from the early childhood, children with disabilities up to adults. So you see, like titles, as we have been explaining, we are offering social and emotional learning and mental health and psychosocial support to the caregivers and parents of children with disabilities. So we are facing a lot of challenges in implementation of social and emotional learning, where we have been thinking to integrate the digital learning to children with disabilities. That could also be like a therapy system to support their hand, those who has a lot of challenges in the hand problem. So the hand problem. So the first problem, and to digitalize the learning could also bring a lot of impact positive impact toward those children, to even create the content and some issues who could even bring money to their lives to give them a future independent life. So, but the problem is we lack an organization, we lack more capacity building to support such kind of program. Also, the gadget as the refugee-led organization that struggle to found even to get grant that could also support those children with disabilities around the camp. So it is some of the challenges that we are facing. But I think to integrate that, we also take the caregivers and the parent of children with disabilities under the program of nutrition. We do train them on permaculture. It is an agriculture system that we cultivate without pesticide or any chemical that we use just manure and grasses to give the to use it like what we call fertilizer. So
Yes, yes.
yeah, we use that because we have think that the parent and caregivers of children with disabilities or those who are living with persons with disabilities are also facing in one way and another many challenges to support others without disabilities in a household. So
Yes.
you see, giving them that the skills on permaculture, it is a way of giving them to empower them to have a small garden in their compound that can also sustain in a nutrition way. And then after that, they can also sell the vegetables to other persons and to earn a little bit money that can also help them to buy like onions and any other things around their compound. So we have many programs that also require a lot of issues like I've seen the link that you have shared that I think is very beneficial even if I've not opened it, because I will open it later in a free time where I can have enough time to read it. So I
Yes.
think, if possible, this organization, this network, can also think to work with us to give us to strengthen our organization to well support the persons with disabilities around a camp setup. So I think I will put our details in the chat to see if you can connect us, if you can also think to connect each other, to have a small collaboration, to see in which way you can also support our organization to make a step uh, forward. So I think this such capacity building, this meeting is very important to us to strengthen our capacity and see how we can make a step forward. Back to you.
No, thank you so much for that because I think we talk a lot about right. The sessions has focused a lot on money management, resource management, and in many of our communities, the financial money part is often limited. But we work in communities that are rich with other resources which are not money, and I think there's a lot of merit in unpacking and thinking more about capacity building by working with others. And so part of this community of practice is to help organizations understand what our colleagues are doing, how they're doing it, and really see what opportunities do we have as a collective to bridge skills. Because money is tight, many of us are not able to pay for skills that have a certain level that we need. And through capacity building and helping each other, we find ways through partnership as well to be able to build the capacity that's required to help us leverage even the use of technology and anything else that we are using. So I think just to close out, as we move towards closing out, I know the session for some of you would have felt rushed, but we do have the peer learning session, which is a follow up to this. So there are other resources which we'd like to share with you, and these are There's one called Acumen's Academy course, and I'd like to ask Priyanka just to share with you a few highlights regarding this particular tool that's available for you to look at and understand.
Yeah, it's just essentially another course that kind of builds more into like just the basic foundations of just accounting and financial statements in case it's relevant to anyone in your organization or any of the teams that you work with. We found this super, super easy to go through. And this, while this may not be relevant to everyone in this call, but if there is someone from your teams who you think should reference to this, we thought it might be a good resource to flag to all of you. I'll also send the link to this course in the follow-up email that I share.
Okay, awesome. That will really be great. I see that Mkelelo has put his details in the chat as well. So please refer to those of you who are online, and communicate with them accordingly. So, and then what are we going to do in our peer learning session? So we sort of tried to cover everything. And this being the last guided module session, not the last session we're together, we thought it's a good opportunity for us to develop a financial management case study for your organization. And the reason why we're calling it a case study is when you pull everything we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks or months together into one place, it then becomes those ideas, that planning, that budget, and financial planning and forecast. What do we need to manage? So for your peer learning session, which is in 2 weeks' time, we'd like you to prepare the following. Which financial management processes does your organization follow? We shared that with each other in the beginning, but this is about documenting it and putting it in one place. And then what are the key financial indicators that drive your decision making? For many of us, it's cash flow. When there's no money, we make no decisions. When there's money, we make decisions. But I am sure there are more indicators we can all use. And therefore, what are those indicators that you are using in your organization? The third question is, how does your organization leverage technology for financial oversight? And the question is, how or does your organization, if you are an organization who has not yet tapped into technology as a solution for financial management and planning? And then lastly, how has financial accountability shifted, from the organization construct? So one, it might be shifting from a shared responsibility to specific roles, from specific roles to shared responsibility, whatever shift was needed. Because when we start organizations, normally everyone's responsible for everything and everything's fine. Then as we grow, we sort of specialize the focus. And sometimes we specialize it such that those of us who are not in finance sort of neglect or don't look at it frequently enough or don't understand it well enough. So where is your organization on this financial accountability journey? Because there's a time where it should be shared, there's a time where it should be specific. And therefore, the case study looking at a case study or looking purely at your organization, everything around this financial management will help us develop a picture and recognize what are the key things. And when we come to our next session in 2 weeks, we would like you to share these, your learnings, your oversight, and contextualizing everything with others. We may find, depending on the number of people in the session, we share certain aspects, but I encourage all of you to please answer all these 4 questions. And if you can, possibly before the session, send your input to Priyanka for your session. It doesn't have to be in any fancy format. It just has to be the narrative. And that will help us contextualize this particular session a lot more for yourselves and be able to choose topics and discussion points which would help most organizations. So the session is in 2 weeks' time. If you can, by the Friday before the session, send through your information to Priyanka, that would be great because it will influence how we structure the next session. Okay. On that note, I don't know if there are any questions as we have 1 more minute left. So I just want to see if there are any questions or anything that is unclear.
Sorry, I have a poll as always. So if you can take that, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, and if you have any questions, then you can just also email us or say them, because I'm recognizing that it's actually 1 minute to finishing time, which means I know many of you run between virtual meetings. I call it run between virtual meetings because one thing was for sure, in virtual world, we forgot to allow for travel time, which is from one meeting to another, even though it's virtually and we're still sitting. But yeah, if you can just answer this poll, and then we look forward to seeing you at the peer learning session in 2 weeks' time, where we really put all of this together and say, this is where our organization is, and we have a strong set of tools to take forward.
Thank you, Sane. Thank you, everyone else as well, for sharing more about your programs. And if you're interested in writing and sharing more about your financial management systems, please reach out to me and I can help you with the peer learning session preparations. Thank you so much. If you've taken the poll, please feel free to drop off. Thank you.